Ibrahim Traoré has been at the heart of Burkina Faso's political upheaval in recent months. His leadership came at a critical juncture when the nation faced both internal and external challenges. How did Traoré manage to navigate this volatile environment? The answers lie in his strategic decisions, each a step towards stabilizing the country, with consequences reaching far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Ibrahim Traoré's rise to prominence in Burkina Faso's turbulent political landscape promises not only a shift in leadership but also a fundamental change in the country's future. As the nation grapples with internal strife and external pressures, his leadership is a beacon of hope for many, yet fraught with risk. The stakes couldn't be higher for Burkina Faso and for Traoré himself. Success could mark the beginning of a new era of stability and growth, while failure could plunge the nation deeper into chaos. In this volatile context, the impact of his decisions is more than political. It's about the very survival of the nation. If Traoré succeeds, Burkina Faso might emerge stronger with an enhanced sense of unity and purpose. But the challenges he faces are formidable. Will he manage to keep the nation intact, or will his leadership falter under pressure? This unfolding narrative will have profound implications for not just the region, but for Africa as a whole. Ibrahim Traoré's decision to assume the leadership of Burkina Faso was not a sudden one. It was a calculated response to the political instability that had gripped the country. Following a series of coups and unrest, the military leader stepped in at a time when the nation was on the brink of collapse. Just a few months into his leadership, Traoré faced an immediate challenge: to restore order in a country torn by violence and distrust. His actions were bold but necessary, launching reforms and re-establishing authority over insurgent groups and political factions. However, his strategy hasn't been without its critics. Some argue that the military approach only exacerbates the crisis, pushing the nation further away from a peaceful resolution. Despite this, the external pressure on Burkina Faso to stabilize has only intensified. The rise of militant groups in the Sahel and ongoing tensions with neighboring nations have placed even more strain on Burkina Faso's fragile situation. Despite the difficulties, Traoré's team is committed to a vision of rebuilding from the ground up with a focus on national unity. Key players in his administration are working behind the scenes to facilitate dialogue with various political factions, while simultaneously strengthening the military's control over insurgent-controlled regions. Yet, every day that passes without a resolution, the stakes grow higher. Will his leadership be able to weather the storm, or will the political and social fabric of Burkina Faso continue to unravel? Ibrahim Traoré, a relatively unknown figure before his rise to power, has quickly emerged as the central figure in Burkina Faso's fight for stability. His leadership style is often described as pragmatic and forceful, qualities that have both earned him support and drawn criticism. The fact that he rose from the ranks of the military to take charge of the nation speaks to his ability to navigate a highly charged political environment. However, his early decisions have been met with mixed reactions from both the people and international observers. One of his first significant moves was to address the country's security situation. With insurgent groups taking control of large swaths of territory, Traoré prioritized military action, sending troops to regain control. His approach, while necessary, has led to accusations of human rights violations and excessive force. The international community has taken note, with some expressing concern over the militarization of politics in Burkina Faso. On the home front, Traoré has also focused on reinforcing the government's authority, seeking to stabilize the economy and improve public morale. His policies have been aimed at addressing food security, boosting local industries, and ensuring that essential services reach communities affected by the violence. While these measures have provided some relief, the long-term effects of his leadership remain uncertain. The question now is whether his military-driven solutions can bring about lasting peace, or if the country will continue to be a battleground for competing forces. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership has unfolded against the backdrop of a rapidly changing political and military landscape in Burkina Faso. From the moment he assumed power, the country has been thrust into a state of emergency, as Traoré had to immediately confront the dual threats of insurgency and political fragmentation. The crisis began to escalate significantly in 2022, when a military coup ousted the previous president, signaling the start of an era of instability. Over the next few months, the new government struggled to regain control over territories that had fallen into the hands of militant groups. The military faced mounting challenges, from a lack of resources to the rapidly deteriorating security situation, which prompted widespread discontent among the population. As the insurgents advanced, the civilian population suffered immensely, with thousands displaced and thousands more killed. Traoré's first major move was to shift focus to securing the country's borders and reinforcing the military's presence in rural areas. In early 2023, he made the controversial decision to declare a state of emergency in regions hardest hit by the violence, just as attacks by armed groups spiked. It was a high-risk strategy aimed at regaining control at any cost, but one that had its critics, particularly from international observers, concerned about the human toll of such operations. By mid-2023, the situation had reached a turning point. The military forces, under Traoré's command, succeeded in reclaiming key territories, albeit at great cost. As the country regained some semblance of stability, the international community, led by ECOWAS and the African Union, stepped in to broker negotiations for peace. These diplomatic efforts were seen as crucial, as they provided Traoré with the opportunity to shift from a purely military strategy to one that could incorporate political dialogue. The events of late 2023 marked a crucial juncture. Traoré opened the door to negotiations with insurgent groups, attempting to strike a balance between military action and the political settlement that the country desperately needed. His administration faced the delicate task of rebuilding trust with the civilian population while ensuring that national security remained intact. As we move into 2024, the focus has shifted to long-term stability. The question now is whether Traoré's administration can deliver on its promises, or if the country will descend back into chaos. His moves to negotiate peace and stabilize the economy are still in their early stages, but the trajectory of Burkina Faso's future depends on his ability to unite the political factions, secure the borders, and ultimately rebuild the nation from the inside out. To understand the full scope of Ibrahim Traoré's leadership and its impact, it's essential to look at the numbers that define the current state of Burkina Faso. From military operations to economic growth, the statistics tell a story of both progress and persistent challenges. Security and military operations. By 2023, the conflict in Burkina Faso had escalated to the point where nearly 40% of the country's territory was under the control of various insurgent groups. This resulted in a drastic increase in military expenditure, with the government allocating over 25% of its national budget to defense and security. In response, Traoré's administration has increased the size of the armed forces by 15% since taking power, focusing on enhancing operational efficiency and equipping soldiers to combat the insurgency. Despite these efforts, the death toll remains high, with estimates of over 10,000 casualties from both military and civilian sides in the past year alone. Displacement and humanitarian impact. The humanitarian crisis caused by the conflict cannot be overstated. According to the United Nations, nearly 2 million people have been displaced within the country, and over 3 million are in dire need of food assistance. As part of his strategy to address the immediate needs of the population, Traoré has directed funds to support internally displaced persons, IDPs, although international aid agencies have warned that the scale of the crisis far outpaces the government's efforts. In response to these figures, the Burkinabe government has been working closely with NGOs and the African Union to coordinate aid distribution and establish refugee camps. However, the sheer volume of displaced individuals, coupled with a lack of infrastructure in rural areas, continues to pose a significant challenge to relief efforts. Economic growth versus stagnation. Economically, Burkina Faso has faced both setbacks and signs of resilience. In 2023, the GDP contracted by 2.5% due to the conflict, with key sectors such as agriculture and mining severely affected. However, despite these challenges, there has been a small but notable recovery in the informal economy, particularly in urban areas where small businesses have slowly started to revive. Traoré's government has made strides to support local industries and stabilize prices for essential goods. The national currency, the CFA franc, has remained relatively stable, in contrast to the rapid depreciation seen in neighboring countries facing similar security challenges. On a brighter note, Traoré has also managed to attract foreign investment in the energy sector, securing a $1 billion deal with a multinational company for the construction of a hydroelectric dam. This project, set to begin in late 2024, is expected to boost the country's energy capacity by 20% and provide jobs for thousands of people. En ce qui concerne long-term outlook, despite these glimmers of hope, the long-term outlook remains uncertain. The success of the energy project will depend on its timely execution and the government's ability to ensure that it is not disrupted by ongoing violence. Furthermore, the question of whether the country can regain investor confidence and re-enter the global market remains unanswered. With all of these factors at play, it's clear that Traoré's leadership is still in its early stages. The numbers reflect both the dire circumstances and the potential for change. The next few years will be critical in determining whether these efforts will be enough to turn the tide for Burkina Faso. As Ibrahim Traoré navigates the complexities of leading Burkina Faso, there are two key perspectives that must be considered. On one hand, the military approach has its staunch defenders who argue that it is the only viable solution to the insurgency that has plagued the country for years. On the other hand, critics contend that this path may further alienate the civilian population and exacerbate the humanitarian crisis. The proponents of Traoré's military-first approach believe that decisive action is necessary to regain control of the country and protect the population from extremist groups. They point to the success of military operations in regions previously held by insurgents, asserting that these actions have saved countless lives by removing violent groups from areas that were under constant threat. For these defenders, Traoré's leadership represents a return to order and stability, even if it comes at a high cost. They argue that without strong military action, the country could risk complete collapse, both socially and economically. However, the opposition argues that the military solution, while effective in certain contexts, does not address the root causes of the conflict. Critics highlight the widespread displacement of civilians, the destruction of homes, and the collapse of local economies as evidence that Traoré's strategy may be creating more harm than good. They contend that the government's focus on military might has overshadowed the need for political dialogue and reconciliation, which they view as the only path to lasting peace. Furthermore, the increasing number of human rights violations committed by security forces under Traoré's command has raised serious concerns about the sustainability of his leadership. Ultimately, the debate over Traoré's approach is a question of priorities. Is military action the best way to restore order, or should the emphasis shift toward diplomatic negotiations and humanitarian aid? The resolution of this debate will define not only Traoré's legacy, but also the future of Burkina Faso. The question remains, can he strike the right balance between security and diplomacy, or will his military-first approach lead to even greater instability? At this critical juncture, one question lingers. Can Ibrahim Traoré's military-led strategy truly bring lasting peace to Burkina Faso? The evidence thus far offers mixed signals. While significant gains have been made in retaking territory from insurgents, the overall cost of these actions has been steep, both in human lives and international relations. The turning point came in late 2023, when Traoré's administration made a pivotal shift. For the first time, the government opened channels for dialogue with insurgent groups, acknowledging that military success alone would not suffice. This move signals a potential change in strategy, one that balances military might with political negotiation, a necessary step for long-term stability. It's an acknowledgement that peace cannot be built solely through force. It requires compromise, even with adversaries. The true test of this new direction will be seen in the coming months. Can Traoré maintain control over the military while embracing political solutions? And can he restore trust among the civilian population who have been caught in the crossfire? Only time will tell if this shift marks the beginning of a new era for Burkina Faso, or if the conflict will continue to simmer beneath the surface. As the political and military landscape in Burkina Faso continues to evolve, the consequences of Ibrahim Traoré's leadership are beginning to ripple through various sectors, impacting not only the nation's internal stability, but also its position in the broader African context. Impact on civilians. The most immediate and visible consequence of Traoré's military-first approach has been the devastation faced by ordinary citizens. With nearly 2 million people displaced within Burkina Faso and millions more in need of humanitarian aid, the humanitarian crisis is reaching alarming proportions. Traoré's military operations, while aimed at reclaiming territory from insurgent groups, have often come at the expense of civilian lives and homes. Villages have been razed, and many have lost their livelihoods due to the ongoing conflict. The mental and physical toll on the population cannot be ignored, and it's unclear how quickly the government can restore confidence in the state's ability to protect its people. En ce qui concerne regional consequences, the crisis in Burkina Faso has had ripple effects on neighboring countries in the Sahel region. As insurgent groups gain traction, the threat of cross-border terrorism grows. Burkina Faso's instability has contributed to the fragility of the region, making it more susceptible to extremist influence. In response, international organizations like ECOWAS and the African Union have stepped up their involvement, pushing for diplomatic solutions while also supporting military interventions. However, these external efforts have been met with mixed results, and the effectiveness of such interventions remains uncertain. The economy and infrastructure. On the economic front, the conflict has stunted growth and development. Burkina Faso's economy contracted by 2.5% in 2023, largely due to the disruption in key sectors such as agriculture and mining. The tourism industry, once a growing sector for the country, has seen a dramatic decline as safety concerns mount. However, despite these setbacks, there are signs of resilience. In urban areas, small businesses have started to revive, and local industries are slowly recovering. Traoré's administration has taken steps to stabilize essential markets, ensuring the flow of basic goods into affected regions. Internationally, Burkina Faso's economy remains largely isolated. The country's focus on military security has overshadowed efforts to attract foreign investment and foster long-term economic partnerships. Despite the international aid that has flowed into the country, it is uncertain how long these resources will sustain Burkina Faso without a significant change in the security environment. En ce qui concerne long-term outlook, looking ahead, the trajectory of Burkina Faso largely depends on the ability of Ibrahim Traoré to shift from a purely military approach to a more balanced solution that incorporates both security and diplomacy. The international community will continue to monitor the country's progress, but real progress will require internal stability, political reconciliation, and economic revitalization. The country's future is intricately tied to Traoré's ability to steer a course that minimizes the suffering of civilians while addressing the root causes of the conflict. As we look to the future of Burkina Faso, under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, three potential scenarios unfold, each with distinct implications for the country's stability and growth. En ce qui concerne 1. Optimistic scenario, peace and stability. In the most optimistic scenario, Burkina Faso emerges from the crisis with a renewed sense of unity. The military's control over insurgent territories continues to stabilize, and Traoré's shift towards political dialogue begins to bear fruit. The government, backed by international organizations, successfully negotiates peace agreements with the insurgent groups, paving the way for a national reconciliation process. Traoré's efforts to rebuild the economy begin to show positive results, with foreign investment returning, particularly in the energy sector. The $1 billion hydroelectric dam project proceeds as planned, providing much-needed energy and creating thousands of jobs. As the security situation improves, civilians begin to return to their homes and the country's economy starts its slow but steady recovery. En ce qui concerne 2. Base scenario, stalemate with ongoing tensions. In a more likely base scenario, Burkina Faso remains in a fragile state of tension. While some regions see a reduction in insurgent activity, the overall situation remains unstable. Traoré's military-led strategy does succeed in retaking key territories, but peace remains elusive. The government continues to grapple with humanitarian challenges, and the economy shows signs of stagnation with limited growth. The diplomatic efforts Traoré has initiated remain stalled, and a full-scale peace agreement with insurgent groups proves difficult to secure. While there is no widespread collapse, the country remains stuck in a cycle of military action and fragile peace talks. Burkina Faso's position in the region remains precarious, as neighboring countries like Mali and Niger continue to face similar instability. En ce qui concerne 3. Pessimistic scenario, escalation and collapse. In the worst-case scenario, the situation in Burkina Faso deteriorates further. Despite the military's successes in regaining territory, the humanitarian crisis worsens, with an increasing number of casualties and displaced civilians. Traoré's reliance on military solutions alienates key political factions and exacerbates internal divisions. International pressure mounts as human rights violations grow, and Burkina Faso faces further isolation on the global stage. The insurgency gains ground again, and neighboring countries become more involved, either through direct military intervention or by supporting competing factions. The economic outlook becomes even bleaker as foreign investments halt and the country faces a deepening recession. In this scenario, the government struggles to maintain control, and Burkina Faso risks slipping into a prolonged period of instability and fragmentation. As we assess the future of Burkina Faso under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, it's crucial to recognize the role each one of us plays in shaping the country's path forward. The situation may seem dire, but there are moments in history where collective action can make all the difference. What happens next is not solely in the hands of political leaders and military commanders. It also rests with the people, the citizens of Burkina Faso and the international community alike. For the people of Burkina Faso, this is a moment of resilience. It is a time to rebuild trust in the state and in each other. The choices made today will determine whether the country moves toward recovery or further division. Whether you're living within the country or in the diaspora, your voice and actions matter. Supporting local businesses, engaging in peaceful dialogue, and advocating for policies that prioritize peace and human rights are essential ways to contribute to the national effort. For the international community, it is vital to continue providing both humanitarian and diplomatic support. Burkina Faso cannot overcome its challenges alone. The role of organizations like the African Union, ECOWAS, and the United Nations is pivotal in facilitating peace talks and offering resources to address the ongoing crisis. In addition to providing aid, the international community must hold all parties accountable, ensuring that human rights are respected and that any peace agreement is inclusive and sustainable. As we reflect on the challenges and opportunities ahead, let us ask ourselves, what can we do to contribute to the future of Burkina Faso? The choices we make today will echo into the future, influencing not only Burkina Faso, but the entire Sahel region. Together, we can shape a better future for all. As Burkina Faso continues to navigate its complex political and security challenges, it's essential to outline a clear roadmap for recovery and long-term stability. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership will need to strike a delicate balance between military action and political diplomacy while addressing the pressing humanitarian needs of the country. Here are a few key steps that must be taken in the coming months to pave the way for peace and prosperity. En ce qui concerne, 1. Prioritize humanitarian assistance. The immediate priority should be addressing the humanitarian crisis. With millions displaced and in dire need of food, shelter, and health care, it's crucial for the government to work with international organizations to ensure that aid reaches those who need it most. This includes improving access to health care, especially in conflict zones, and providing basic supplies to IDP camps and rural areas. En ce qui concerne, 2. Strengthen diplomatic channels. While military efforts are important, Traoré must continue to pursue diplomatic solutions to end the insurgency. This will require facilitating dialogue between the government and insurgent groups, as well as engaging political factions within the country to ensure that any peace agreement is truly inclusive. International mediation, if done effectively, can play a crucial role in securing a lasting peace. En ce qui concerne, economic revitalization. To prevent further economic decline, the government must focus on rebuilding key sectors such as agriculture, mining, and infrastructure. Encouraging foreign investment will be critical, particularly in the energy sector, where projects like the hydroelectric dam hold significant potential for economic growth and job creation. Supporting local businesses and creating stable conditions for trade will also be essential in revitalizing the economy. En ce qui concerne, 4. Rebuilding trust and unity. Finally, a national reconciliation process must be launched to heal the divisions caused by years of conflict. Traoré should prioritize transparency, justice, and the protection of human rights, ensuring that the voices of all Burkinabés are heard in the rebuilding process. As we reflect on the journey of Burkina Faso and the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, it's clear that the path ahead is fraught with challenges. Yet, in these moments of hardship, there is a glimmer of hope. The resilience of the Burkinabe people, the courage of those standing on the front lines, and the commitment to rebuilding a fractured nation are what will ultimately define the future. For Traoré, this is more than just a political struggle. It's a personal mission to restore peace and dignity to a country that has known too much suffering. His every decision, while shaped by military strategy, is driven by a desire to secure a better future for his people. In the midst of all the turmoil, the question we must ask ourselves is, what can we do to help? Whether through supporting humanitarian efforts, advocating for peace, or simply standing in solidarity with Burkina Faso, each action counts. The journey is long, but the spirit of hope and unity can carry Burkina Faso through even the darkest times. Let us not forget that even in the most difficult circumstances, the human spirit has the power to rise, rebuild, and transform. The future of Burkina Faso is not set in stone. It is shaped by the actions of today. As Burkina Faso navigates its complex path to peace, the time to act is now. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership has set the stage for change, but it's not a journey that can be undertaken alone. The fate of the country rests not only on the decisions made by the government, but also on the involvement of each one of us, whether as citizens of Burkina Faso, as members of the international community, or as advocates for peace and justice. En ce qui concerne Here's What You Can Do, support humanitarian efforts. Whether through donations, volunteering, or raising awareness, every effort counts in alleviating the suffering of millions displaced by the conflict. Advocate for peace. Encourage dialogue, understanding, and peaceful solutions. Stand up for those whose voices have been silenced by violence. Promote education and unity. Help foster national reconciliation by supporting initiatives that build bridges between divided communities. The road to peace is never easy, but it begins with a single step. Together, we can help Burkina Faso rebuild, heal, and rise stronger than ever. Will you take that step today?